My name is John Sterling, and this is The Spiritual Path to Grieving, a collection of wisdom from the spiritual traditions of the world that through the centuries have helped people navigate the painful path of grieving. The stages of grief include shock, denial, anger, and sadness. The spiritual traditions of the world have prayers, rituals that through the centuries has helped people navigate the painful path of grieving. The cycle of grief has its own timetable. Until the cycle is honored and completed, we are moving along life's path with an anchor down, weighted down in this land of Dundabar. An English professor at college told our class about how he dealt with the death of a close friend. He said he went home and played a recording of the saddest music he knew. He plunged into the darkness. He acknowledged his grief and allowed it to pour out. He knew that the way he could get beyond his loss was to allow himself to feel the pain in all its intensity. Grief seems like a winter house, guarded, sheltered against an outside world that's expected to be difficult. The windows are small to keep the cold out, and a little light gets in. The darkness and warmth make a cozy place to hide, to nurse wounds, to incubate what is not ready to be exposed. Grief, as I've read somewhere once, is a lazy Susan. One day it is heavy and underwater, and the next day it spins and stops, and loud and rageful. And the next day a wounded meeting, and the next day numbness and silence and depression. Grief is like wind. When it's blowing hard, you adjust your sails and run before it. If it blows too hard, you stay in the harbor, close to the hatches, and don't take calls. When it's gentle, you go sailing and have a picnic. Take a swim. Enjoy the water and the vibrations. While grieving, we must take a second to reflect about those little blessings in life that we must be appreciative of, and know that in God's time, everything happens for a reason. Grief is love, not wanting to let go. Grief is a sign that we love something more than ourselves. Grief makes us worthy to suffer with the rest of the world. Grief is a time when we are blessed with the opportunity to complete a natural process of spiritual death and rebirth before our own death. No bond in closer union knits to human hearts than fellowship in grief. Being a good steward of pain involves being alive in your life. It involves taking the risk of being open, of reaching out, of keeping in touch with the pain as well as the joy of what happens, because at no time more than at a painful time do we live out of the depths of who we are instead of out of the shallows. When tears come, I breathe deeply and rest. I know I am swimming in a hollow stream where many have gone before. I am not alone, crazy, or having a nervous breakdown. My heart is at work. My soul is awake. Is it for tears? He told me. When somebody died, the mourners put their tears into these bottles and wore them around their necks. So the little vase isn't really a vase. It's a bottle of mourner's tears, a sign of bereavement, like the black Armands people wore up until the 3rd or 4th decade of the century. Tears are prayer beads for all of us, men and women, all colors and creeds, because they arise from the fullness of the heart. The cloud weeps and then the garden sprouts. The baby cries and the mother's milk flows. The nurse of creation has said, let them cry a lot. This rain weeping and sun burning twine together to make us grow. Keep your intelligence white hot and your grief glistening so your life will stay fresh. Cry easily like a little child, God's child. Finally, a story that reminds us that no matter where we live, we can participate in the grief of the family and friends of victims of terrorism. For instance, slavery, the Holocaust, the terrorism that's going on now in the streets, systemic racism. We must stand together and grieve together as one. Once again, thank you for viewing and tuning in. My name is Josh Sterling. Namaste. I love you.